My aunt passed away when I was in high school. We were not close at all, especially during her last days. She had a huge drinking problem. I was into tarot cards and the Ouija board. When she was in the hospital, I swore she was possessed. Her face was pale, but her eyes were black. She kept telling us that men behind her were there to protect her, and they knew all. She told us that we could not see them, but they were there. She died a few days later, and all the photos that were taken of her have a dark feeling about them. My grandmother cremated her, and she has her ashes at the house. Now every single time we visit my grandmother, there's always something creepy or strange happening. The piano my grandmother has will start playing on its own. If you sleep in my aunt's old room, which is now a guest room, you will feel like you are being touched and scratched at. The bed will have compressions on it like someone is laying there, even after it was made. I refuse to go upstairs because I feel like something is ready to push me off the stair. My kids are afraid each time we visit, but are not able to tell us why. There is a lot more to this, but I am sure my grandmother's house has some demonic activity going on, because my possessed aunt invited it all in. I was staying in my father's house in the country. It was really old, about 16th century, with a bread oven in the wall outside, low doorways, and thick stone walls. It was so old there was no corridor to my bedroom, and you had to walk through another bedroom just to get to mine. I was around 14 years old and had been clothes shopping that day, and strewn the carrier bags of my shopping on the other single bed in my room. That night, my dad and stepmom went out to a function, but I wasn't alone, as a family friend was staying over. I went to bed, and the door opened. I didn't think anything of it, as we had cats that used to wander around in the night. Then I heard the crunching of the carrier bags on the other bed. Again, I thought it was the cat settling down for the night. Then I smelt an awful smell. It was like an entire box of matches had been lit at once. Again, I thought it was the cat, so I got up to go locate the source of the smell, and put the animal out. As I was getting out of bed, my bedroom door banged open. It really freaked me out, and I hid under the covers while I calmed down and got back to normal. I eventually got out of my bed and put on the light, seeing that my shopping had been stacked neatly on the other bed. I didn't even leave them like this, and went to go confront the family friend who was in the next bedroom to tell them off for trying to scare me. They were shocked to see me because they had just seen a girl in a nightgown with long hair run out of my bedroom and down the stairs. They thought it was me. I pointed out that my dad had just put in a spiral staircase and that there was no way that you could run down that. Plus, there was only one route in and out of that room. Suffice to say, we got up, put all the lights on in the house, and waited for the adults to return. I never slept in that part of the house again. These are two stories of mine that are both kind of connected. When I was younger, in middle school or so, my friend used to stay over my house in the afternoons until her parents were done with work and would pick her up. Being tweens, we'd get bored pretty easily, so we'd often search for things to do in my house. So one day, we found a camera with night vision and decided to try it out, closing all the blinds and turning off all the lights in a room and record ourselves just dicking around. My friend, having a shorter attention span than I did, got tired of it pretty quickly and went out to the living room for some food. While I stayed in my room to mess around more, I sat on the floor and was recording my room, then started to record my hand and such, again, just dicking around. I then moved the camera up, and there was someone standing in front of me. The figure was just dark, like a cardboard cutout of a person, without the details. I screamed louder than I ever have before or since, and noped out of that room so fucking fast, dropping the camera. My friend came running to me, wondering what happened, and I was nearly in tears because I was so shocked. She went to the room and flipped on the lights, and the video recorder was sitting there, on the floor, upright with the viewfinder closed. She grabbed it and slammed the door, and rewatched it, and it stopped recording right before I looked up. I tried to forget about the whole experience, but my friend would bring it up sometimes throughout the years, but I'm a pretty rational person, so I always try to downplay it. My friends, when sleeping over the house, say they always get a weird vibe. Some of them had even asked to go home because they felt so creeped out. I'd never felt it, and I never told them about my experience. I used to have dreams about that thing all the time, That's all pretty cliche of most horror movies, though, so for years, I've never really put any stock in it. This leads me to my second story. One night in college, I drove up to my old school to see a band I had become friendly with. The drive was in the next state up, but we were near the border, so it only took around an hour. I'd done the drive many times to visit friends from my old school, both during the day and at night, so I knew the route pretty well. We were going to a pub I'd only been to once, so I had to turn on my GPS just for the last bit, to make sure I wouldn't get lost. On the way there, you have to drive up this mountain. It's all curvy roads of climbs and dips. So we're going up this mountain, when my friend remarks that we've been going up for some time. I was like, yeah, we have. It feels like forever or something. We passed by this ski resort place, and I could swear we had passed it before, but I kept that to myself, figuring I had just spazzed and envisioned it on my mental roadmap or something. Around 5 minutes later, I see it again. I had no idea how we were going in circles, around a mountain, going uphill, especially when following my GPS. My friend and I were a little weirded out, and decided to stop. We looked at the route the GPS was taking us, and it seemed like normal. And if we followed it, it would take us the right way. We decided to keep following it again. Meanwhile, on the radio, we had been hearing weird things. It sounded like people talking, but it was extremely muddled. It was mountain radio though, so it didn't seem so weird, and we just started to play CDs instead. We followed the GPS, and the motherfucking ski resort came up again. Officially weirded out, I decided to skip the GPS, and just took a random road. It took an hour longer than it should have, but we got there, had a good time, then started to head back. We chuckled as we passed the ski resort, and seemed to make it past whatever part we got lost in before. We talked about the radio, and wanted to see if we could find it again, and we seemed to find it for just a second, and then lost it. We were talking about it, and then my headlights illuminated something black. It was just like darkness, and I only saw it for a second, but both my friend and I stopped talking. I thought I might have just seen something wrong, but my friend said, "Did you just see that random spot of black, or did I just have a seizure?" I yelled, "Yeah," and we talked excitingly about it to each other for a second. But all of a sudden, there was another black spot in the middle of the road. I didn't even have time to comprehend it. My mind just made me swerve into the other lane of traffic around it. It took me a second to realize what I had just seen. It looked just like a person, but all dark. I looked back in my rear view as my friend was shouting in my ear about it, but it was too dark to see if there was anything still there. My friend and I made it home without incident, but it still freaks me out to think about it. I feel silly about even posting this, and didn't want to post it into No Sleep because it's not really a story, but it's nice to be able to talk about it somewhere anonymous. I don't really know if it's anything real, because I don't really believe in that, but it's nice to get it off my chest without sounding like someone who does believe in ghost stories and such. This happened over a month ago. My 2-year-old daughter woke up at 6 a.m., and since I did not have to be up until 6:45, I decided to bring her into my room until I had to prepare for the day. I picked up my daughter from her crib, and she began crying for her blanket. So we went back to her bedroom and to her crib to grab the blanket. That is when I saw my daughter in the crib. She had the exact same outfit, the same bedhead, but she was emotionless, dead eyes. I looked at my daughter who was in my arms to make sure I was not holding some demon of some kind, but she looked at me scared. I looked back into the crib and my daughter that was in the crib completely disappeared. I grabbed my daughter and took her to my room, placed her on my bed, and she held my hand while I cried of terror and texted my husband about what happened. My husband ended up coming home early to comfort me. Two years ago, I woke up around 1 a.m. thinking, I can never go home again. It was the most intense sense of homesickness I've ever experienced, full of panic and regret. I tried to calm myself down. Logically, of course, I could. My parents lived just a couple hours away, still in my childhood home. I had fought hard to get away from the suburb I grew up in, so why this sudden, intense longing? The next day, I got a call that my dad had been hospitalized during the night and was on the ICU. He didn't make it out, and while the house is still there, it's not home anymore. When I was in high school, the days before cell phones were common, my friends were to come over and pick me up from my house one night. We had made plans at school for them to come and pick me up at 7 p.m. At 6, my parents said I had to come and do something with them, and I totally forgot to call my friends and tell them. They came to my house at 7 p.m. and called the house phone. No one answered. There was 4 of them in the car. They told us the same exact story. They said that they were about to pull out of the driveway, but they saw someone peek through the blinds from the bedroom on the top floor. That was my room, so they assumed that I was fucking around. 5 more times they said that someone would peek through the blinds, and a couple of them said they even saw the person's eyes. We got home at probably around 7:10 to 7:15, and they were still in our driveway. One of my friends came over and said they thought I was messing with them. They asked me, "So who's staying in your room?" I told them that no one was in there, so they asked, "Who is at your house right now?" Again, I had told them no one. Their stone-cold faces then told me what they had seen over the last 15 minutes. At first, we all thought there was a burglar in the house or something, so we called the cops. They came over and inspected the house. There was 0 signs of a break-in. Nothing was touched, and nothing was stolen. Our house had an alarm on it, so there was no way someone could have come into the house without setting off the alarm. My family, my friends, and the cop all kinda just stood around for a few minutes, trying to make sense of the situation. My friends swore up and down, and still do, that they couldn't have imagined what they saw. All 4 of them saw the same things, and it wasn't particularly dark that night, so their eyes wouldn't be playing tricks on them. To this day, none of us can make sense of this situation. A lot of weird things happened in this house, and it was a fairly old house, I think 70 or so odd years old. The other things that happened can all be explained due to just seeing or hearing things, but this one story is truly unexplainable. My sister fell asleep on the couch on a few occasions, but she would wake up in bed. She never had any actual reported cases of sleepwalking, but it's possible that she was. My mom and my sister said they saw a lady in white. My sister said she saw her on a few occasions. We had a winding staircase to go upstairs, and my sister said that a few times late at night, when she made the turn to go upstairs, she saw a figure at the top, looking down at her. My mom said she saw the same figure a few times out of the corner of her eye while watching TV late at night. On a few different occasions, our house phone rang at 3 a.m. in the morning. We had caller ID, and the number on the display would always read 66. It's the only time I can remember where the caller ID displayed a number that wasn't 7 digits long. I never really felt alone in the house, even when I was completely alone. It was always just this feeling that someone was always in the next room over. When my mom passed away, it was a shock. I expected it, but it still hurt. I'll pause and explain. She had cancer, and Christmas 2010, she seemed in remission. Her hair was coming back, her x-rays looked clean, and she was even eating again. So to celebrate, I literally went all out decorating her place for Christmas. Biggest, fullest Christmas tree I could find. Tinsel garlands, homemade popcorn garlands, candles, Santa's everything. It looked like Christmas threw up all over this house. Awesome Christmas. I'm glad it happened. Well, December 26th rolls around, my birthday, and I start to pack up the decorations. I pull an ornament off the tree, then pause and look at it. This ornament was older than I was. It was a little teddy bear on a red tricycle, and I loved the fuck out of this ornament. But in that moment where I looked at it, all the joy I felt from the awesome Christmas just disappeared and was replaced with grief. A little voice somewhere whispered, "It's her last Christmas." I started shaking and dropped the ornament, and had to leave. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think, I just cried and smoked a pack of cigarettes. She passed away in May 2011, 5 months later. As I said, I expected it. At first I felt like she was still there. I chalked that up to normal grief. But there are other things. I would see her, brief glimpses and short flashes, or I would dream of her. She was always sick when I saw her, just like she had been when she died. Over the course of the next 2 years, though, I would see her and she would slowly be getting better. Her hair came back, she walked again. Simple things we take for granted. I remember the first dream she could talk again. It was about 1.5 years after she died. I can't remember what she said, as I woke up crying, but they were happy tears. In the last dream I had, I was in a foyer of a large house. It was marble and gold everywhere. The foyer was round with a staircase winding the wall, and a chaise lounger hugging the stairs. Everyone was there. My brothers, sister, stepdad, even people I didn't know. Then the door. There was a knock. I remember I could see the silhouette of a person through the frosted glass, and when I opened it, there stood my mom, healthy as ever. She carried the purse/backpack thing she always held, and her clothes were what she wore before she got sick and had to wear the hospital gowns. She hugged me, said hi, walked in, then sat on the lounger. No one seemed to notice, so I tugged my brother's arm. Mom's here. Yeah, but she's dead. Yeah, and that was it. He shrugged. Then she grabbed me and shook me and began to say something. I don't know what. I never heard or I just can't remember, but she was frantic, desperately trying to tell me something. I woke up and that feeling like she was still here was gone. I haven't dreamt of her since, not in the same way at least. It never felt like she was actually there. I haven't seen her out of the corner of my eye, nothing. It felt like she is really gone. I don't know why I wanted to share this, but for some reason, your story reminded me of this. I don't know if it was her or just sorrow, probably the latter, but it was something. After that dream, I pretty much crashed into a depression that almost consumed me entirely. My family and I decided to rent this beautiful historical house that was built around the Underground Railroad era. It had small hideouts and doors where slaves would hide out. As soon as we moved in, we got uncomfortable vibes from it. We'd hear footsteps coming from upstairs when everyone was downstairs, and the TV would turn on and off by itself, and doors would open and doors would close by themselves. We eventually accepted the fact that we had a ghost. It seemed harmless, so we called her Claudia. Each of my family members had seen her at least once. She was a tall, dark figure who would move fast. Most of the hauntings would come from my bedroom. It was always cold and had an unpleasant smell. My little brother began sleepwalking and would have terrible nightmares. One night became the final straw for my family and our relationship with Claudia. My sister and I were away at our friends, while my parents and brothers were at home. The whole house was asleep when my dad woke up from screaming coming from my bedroom. When he ran past the living room, where my little brother liked to sleep because of his sleepwalking, he noticed that my brother wasn't there. So he ran up the stairs, where he met my older brother, who had just heard the screaming as well, and they realized that it was my little brother screaming in my room. They both went to open the door, but it was like something was blocking it. So finally, my dad busted the door, and as the door flew open, a black shadow ran right past him and my brother. He then entered my room that was so cold that he could see his own breath. He looked over at my little brother, who was laying on my bed and covered in sweat and tears, and started yelling his name to wake him up. But my little brother just pointed, still asleep, at the corner of the room and started yelling, "Get her, Daddy, get her." My dad looked over, but saw nothing but pitch black. That was enough for him. He quickly grabbed my brother, who was stiff as a board, and he ran the hell out of there. When my brother woke up the next day, he had no memory of what happened that night, and still doesn't remember when we talk about it almost 5 years later. We moved out of that house a few weeks after the incident, and my brother stopped sleepwalking as soon as we did. We've heard a few other stories from the people who currently own the house, but nothing quite as terrifying as what happened to my brother or my dad. The house has a great history behind it, but it was too creepy for my family. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Please like or share this video. That would be pretty bomb of you. I also wanted to take a second to thank you guys for all the support. Your positive feedback, your positive comments, all go a long ways for me. It's hard to say how happy I am to have you guys. Thanks for being such cool bros and gals. Again, thanks for watching. Oh yeah, and one last thing. Stay spooky, my friends.